The readings for Monday, April 10th. So, just for the app that I'm looking at, it's not telling me like, oh, Matins Gospel, Epistle, anything like that. Much like how throughout Lent it just said Old Testament, Old Testament, Old Testament. It's the same thing here. It just says Gospel. There's just two Gospel readings. So, as we're cruising through Holy Week here, liturgically, I imagine it's going to get pretty goofy, pretty mixed up, because typically most parishes will have church every day, multiple times a day. There'll be a bridegroom matin service in the evening, which I went to the Monday bridegroom service last night, and it was very gorgeous, very beautiful. Can't recommend it enough. But yeah, you'll have pre-sanctified liturgies in the morning. There'll be, especially as we get to like Holy, like Thursday and Friday, there's like afternoon services. So it's hard to communicate that through an app of just like, this is the one readings that, that like you do at this point in the morning. It's like, it doesn't really work that way. So we're starting to see a reflection of that. FYI, it's just two gospel readings. So I'll let you parse out, ask your priest or whatever which gospel readings go where, for what services, so to speak, and when they're read. But I'm not going to get into that level of minutia. So yeah, we'll just do the two gospel readings for this day, the whole day. And the first gospel reading is from Matthew chapter 21, verses 18 through 43. Now, in the morning, as he returned to the city, he was hungry, and seeing a fig tree by the road, he came to it and found nothing on it but leaves, and said to it, "Let no fruit grow on you ever again." Immediately the fig tree withered away. And when the disciples saw it, they marveled, saying, "How did the fig tree wither away so soon?" So Jesus answered and said to them, "Assuredly, I say to you, if you have faith and do not doubt, you will not only do what was done to the fig tree, but also if you say to this mountain, 'Be removed and be cast into the sea,' it will be done. And whatever things you ask in prayer, believing, you will receive." Now, when he came into the temple, the chief priests and the elders of the people confronted him as he was teaching, and said, "By what authority are you doing these things? And who gave you this authority?" But Jesus answered and said to them, "I also will ask you one thing, which if you tell me, I likewise will tell you by what authority I do these things. The baptism of John, where was it from? From heaven or from men?" And they reasoned among themselves, saying, "If we say from heaven, he will say to us, 'Why then did you not believe him?' But if we say from men, we fear the multitude, for all count John as a prophet." So they answered Jesus and said, "We do not know." And he said to them, "Neither will I tell you by what authority I do these things. But what do you think? A man had 2 sons, and he came to the first and said, 'Son, go, work today in my vineyard.' He answered and said, 'I will not.' But afterward he regretted it and went. Then he came to the second and said likewise. And he answered and said, 'I go, sir.' But he did not go. Which of the 2 did the will of his father?" They said to him, "The first." Jesus said to them, "Assuredly, I say to you that tax collectors and harlots enter the kingdom of God before you. For John came to you in the way of righteousness, and you did not believe him. But tax collectors and harlots believed him. And when you saw it, you did not afterward relent and believe him." Hear another parable. There was a certain landowner who planted a vineyard
and set a hedge around it, dug a winepress in it, and built a tower. And he leased it to vine dressers and went into a far country. Now, when vintage time drew near, he sent his servants to the vine dressers, that they might receive its fruit. And the vine dressers took his servants, beat one, killed one, and stoned another. Again he sent other servants, more than the first, and they did likewise to them. Then last of all he sent his son to them, saying, They will respect my son. But when the vine dressers saw the son, they said among themselves, This is the heir. Come, let us kill him and seize his inheritance. So they took him and cast him out of the vineyard and killed him. Therefore, when the owner of the vineyard comes, what will he do to those vine dressers? They said to him, He will destroy those wicked men miserably, and lease his vineyard to other vine dressers who will render to him the fruits in their seasons. Jesus said to them, Have you never read the Scriptures? The stone which the builders rejected has become the chief cornerstone. This was the Lord's doing, and it was marvelous in our eyes. Therefore, I say to you, the kingdom of God will be taken from you and given to a nation bearing the fruits of it. And whoever falls on this stone will be broken, but on whoever it falls, it will grind them to powder. All right. I did one verse more than I should have. Sorry, I guess you guys don't mind. And whoever falls on this stone will be broken. Like, that was not required in today's daily readings, but I threw it in for y'all anyways. Nice little bonus. And yeah, let's hit some footnotes now from the Orthodox Study Bible. For verse 19, the fig tree, a symbol of prosperity and peace, withers because it is fruitless. This is a prophetic act directed toward the Jews, since after 3 years of Christ's preaching, teaching, and healing, both the leaders and the crowds were destitute of spiritual fruit. He curses the tree also to warn those in every generation of what will befall anyone who fails to listen to his message. For verse 21, while it is not recorded that an apostle literally moved a mountain, the fathers are clear that they had this authority if the need had risen. Certain saints did make crevices appear in mountains. Furthermore, not everything the apostles accomplished was written down. Beyond the literal meaning, the promise is also an illustration to the power of faith and prayer in all areas of life. Quote, Whatever we ask without hesitation and believing in God's power, we shall receive, end quote, when we ask for spiritually profitable things. Says Theophan the Recluse, unless there's another saint that starts with Theo as an abbreviation. Theophanus, maybe? I think that's a saint. Okay, for verses 23 through 27. Since Christ is not a Levitical priest, the chief priests and elders challenge his authority to cleanse the temple. As Christ is careful not to reveal himself to scoffers, he confounds with them a different question about John. Both the elders' question and Christ's question require the same answer, and thus would lead a person to confess that Jesus has come from heaven. By not answering them differently, Christ teaches us not to answer people who come asking about holy things with a malicious intent. And for verse 31, using their own principles, the elders convict themselves in their answer to Christ's parable. For verses 33 through 43, it says to See the footnote at Luke chapter 20, verses 9 through 16. And for verse 41, again, the Jewish leaders convict themselves. See footnote for chapter 21, verse 31, which we just read. And for verse 44, since I read it, we'll read the footnote for it. This stone is Christ. According to St. John Chrysostom, this saying illustrates the two ways of destruction. Those falling on the stone are people who suffer the consequence of their sins while yet in this life, whereas those on whom the stone falls are unrepentant people suffering utter destruction in the final judgment. The second gospel reading is from the book of Matthew as well, chapter 24, verses 3 through 35. Now, as he sat on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, "Tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming, and of the end of the age?" And Jesus answered and said to them, "Take heed that no one deceives you. For many will come in my name, saying, 'I am the Christ,' and will deceive many. And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not troubled, for all these things must come to pass. But the end is not yet, for nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. And there will be famines, pestilences, and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. Then they will deliver you up to tribulation and kill you, and you will be hated by all the nations for my name's sake. And then many will be offended, will betray one another, and will hate one another. Then many false prophets will rise up and deceive many. And because lawlessness will abound, the love of many will grow cold. But he who endures to the end shall be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in all the world as a witness to all the nations. And then the end will come. Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place, whoever reads, let him understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let him who is on the housetop not go down in to take anything out of the house, and let him who is in the field not go back to get his clothes. But woe to those who are pregnant and to those who are nursing babies in those days, and pray that your flight may not be in winter or on the Sabbath, for then there will be great tribulation, such as has not been since the beginning of the world until this time. No, nor ever shall be. And unless those days were shortened, no flesh would be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days would be shortened. Then if anyone says to you, 'Look, here's the Christ,' or 'There,' do not believe it. For false Christs and false prophets will rise and show great signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect. See, I have told you beforehand. Therefore, if they say to you, 'Look, he is in the desert,' do not go out, or 'Look, he is in the inner rooms,' do not believe it. For as the lightning comes from the east and flashes to the west, so also will be the coming of the Son of Man. For wherever the carcass is, there the eagles will be gathered together. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven, and then all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he will send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they will gather together his elect from the four winds, from the one end of heaven to the other. Now, Learn this parable from the fig tree. When its branch has already become tender and puts forth leaves, you know that summer is near. So you also, when you see these things, know that it is near at the doors. Assuredly, I say to you, this generation will by no means pass away till all these things take place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will by no means pass away.
All right, some footnotes from the Orthodox Study Bible. So for this exact passage, verses 3 through 35, it mentions that this passage is read on Holy Monday, the Monday before Pascha or Easter. That, of course, is today, everybody. Yes, sirree. For verse 3, actually, so there's a big footnote here for verses 3 through 31. So pretty much a bulk of what we just read. It says, the scriptures describe the end times in a variety of ways, so that no precise chronology can be determined. See Dan chapter 7 chapters 7 through 12, Mark chapter 13, Luke chapter 21, 1 Corinthians chapter 15 verses 51 through 55, 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 verses 13 through 17, 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 verses 1 through 10, and the book of Revelation. The Lord's emphasis is on watchfulness and the practice of virtue rather than on constructing timetables of things that have not yet happened. In Matthew's account here, the end is described as encompassing, number 1, the initial sorrows, as noted in verses 4 through 14. Number 2, the great tribulation, as noted in verses 15 through 28. And number 3, the coming of the Son of Man, as noted in verses 29 through 31. The period of the Great Tribulation includes the entire Christian era and is not limited to the final years before Christ's return. For verses 4 and 5, the warnings against deception are given the most emphasis. Of particular importance is the warning against following a false Christ, which Jesus stresses again in verses 11 and 23 through 27. For verse 6, the wars here refer first and foremost to the Roman destruction of Jerusalem, but certainly include subsequent wars. Wars are not a sign of the imminent end, but of the opposite, that the end is not yet. See 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verses 1 through 3. For verse 14, all these calamities and all this opposition cannot stop the spread of the gospel, and indeed, persecutions against the church often increase the number of souls being converted. St. John Chrysostom marvels that while the Romans subdued countless Jews in a political uprising, they could not prevail over 12 Jews unarmed with anything except the gospel of Jesus Christ. True that. For verse 15, Daniel's prophecy of the abomination of desolation, that is in Daniel chapter 9, verse 23, was fulfilled in AD 70, when the Roman general Titus entered the most holy place and had a statue of himself erected in the temple before having the temple destroyed. The Lord's phrase, "when you see," indicates that many of the disciples would still be alive in that time. The words, "whoever reads, let him understand," are commonly understood to be inserted by Matthew into Christ's address as an encouragement to his early Christian flock, who may have witnessed this event. Yeah, that part was in parentheses, I should add, so
Seems plausible to me. For verse 19, it just says to see the footnote at Luke chapter 23, verse 29. For verse 20, the severity of winter weather or respect for the Sabbath would prevent many faithful from fleeing quickly in a time of desperation. A spiritual interpretation given by the Fathers sees the Sabbath as symbolizing idleness with regard to virtue, and winter as indicating fruitlessness with regard to charity. Thus, the person who departs this life in such a spiritual state will suffer judgment. For verse 27, in what manner will Christ come back? The event will be unmistakable to the whole world. If there is any question or doubt, that alone is evidence that he has not returned. As Christ's return will shine from the east, so Orthodox Christians, whenever possible, worship facing eastward in symbolic hope and anticipation of his second and glorious coming. For verse 28, it says to see the footnote at Luke chapter 17, verse 37. For verse 29, according to the Fathers, the sun will not be destroyed, but darkened in relation to the glory of Christ. In other words, the sun will appear to be dark by comparison when Christ returns in the fullness of his splendor. For verse 30, the sign of the Son of Man is the cross, which will be revealed as the standard for Christ's impending judgment. While at his first coming, Christ came in humility and immortality. At his second coming, he will be revealed in power and great glory. See the footnote at Esther chapter 6, verses 6 through 9. For verse 31, the phrase they will gather, it says to see 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verses 13 through 18. And for verse 34, this generation refers to all believers at all times, the generation of the church, and not merely to those alive at the time of Christ. All right, that is a wrap on today. Yep. Hope you guys have, once again, a blessed, pious, zealous Holy Week. Go to as much services as you can. If you cannot make the morning ones, hit the PM ones. It's a lot of work. It's a bit of a chore, but the state of tranquility you'll have on the other side of it all, having done all... I did all the services last year. I took the whole week off work, and can't recommend it enough. Your back gets sore, your legs get sore, but it's like, I don't know. It's almost like psychotherapy, though. Like, as you start leaving each service as the week goes on, you find yourself less ready to like turn the radio on. You start driving a little bit slower. And it just makes the payoff of Pascha, when we break the fast, all that much sweeter. So I always tell you guys, I've been telling you all the same thing all Lent. Try to increase your prayer life. Try to increase your spiritual readings. The same goes for Holy Week. We're doubling down on our efforts, but part of that is like try to attend as many services as you can. Most parishes will have them available for you this week. You know, it's liturgically correct to do church, like I said, multiple times a day this week. So take full advantage of it. It'll be burdensome as you do it, but you'll thank me later, though. And that's my only advice to you. And also, please pray for me, a sinner. Thank you.